Hello, dear Manhwa lovers. I hope you're having an amazing day. Before we begin, I want to give a very special shout out to everyone who left comments on the previous video. A huge hug and a special greeting to DarkGamer3492, who managed to leave the first comment on the last video. You're the fastest of them all. Thank you so much. Now, without further ado, let's get started with this incredible summary. Yuman had attended an all-girls middle and high school. She never went to a co-ed academy, which is why she didn't have many opportunities to interact with boys. Later, she decided to enroll in area university after hearing rumors that it was mostly male-dominated. To her, this was something unusual, but also fun, especially because of the stares she received from the men, which didn't bother her at all. During that time, she began to feel a desire to believe in God, but couldn't connect deeply when singing alone. One night, after forgetting something in the classroom, she returned to the empty room, completely alone. It was then that she felt those stares again and experienced a great fascination. That was when she started playing the guitar and discovered a new world. The memory of that day became deeply ingrained in her mind. From that moment on, she couldn't help but repeat similar experiences, and over time, she began to enjoy that feeling more and more. She mentioned dating a guy in her second year, but Choi interrupted her, saying he'd heard enough and concluding that Yumin was obsessed and couldn't find inner peace with ordinary things. While she didn't entirely deny this, she mentioned the 2 times they had prayed together. Yuman asked Choi to keep her secret. He thought she was doing it because she really liked him and agreed to keep it. Later, Choi recalled some secrets of other girls from engineering, but Yuman brought him back to the present, reminding him they'd be late for class. They ran out of her house, joking about what had happened the night before. Days later, Choi faced various challenges, but finally returned to his normal life. He had managed to complete the project that had caused him so many issues with Seola. Once that connection ended, she returned to her usual cheerful mood, as if walking on air. Choi knew he had become a stranger to her again. At that moment, Yumin greeted him with a pat on the back, looking truly charming. As they started walking together, Choi was intrigued by Yuming's new style, which had changed even more. He asked if she wasn't feeling cold, to which Yuming responded by asking if he was worried about her, even though he wasn't. Choi joked about the cosplay from the other time, which made Yuming punch him in the chest. When he complained about this, he noticed Yuming blushing as she called him an idiot. This made Choi nervous, but he also realized that some guys around them had witnessed the entire interaction and were approaching. He knew that being seen with a beautiful girl at the university always drew attention, so he wanted to avoid that situation. He decided to run off to his classes, saying goodbye to Yuming. Ever since he had discovered her secret, he felt uncomfortable around her and wanted to avoid her for a while to let things settle and prevent any strange feelings from developing that could affect her. However, Yuming caught up to him and told him that the professor was always late. Choi was surprised that she ran alongside him simply because she saw him running first and wanted to follow him. This made some of the guys watching wonder if Yuming and Choi were dating, as they seemed close. This left Kim, who was nearby listening, intrigued. From a distance, Seola also witnessed everything that happened. Later that evening, while Choi was working on an assignment alone in a classroom, he realized it had gotten late and decided it was time to leave. Just then, he heard the door open and saw Seola enter, a girl he found stunning. Choi was intrigued by her presence, but Seola had only come to work on her own task and didn't want any attention. Although Choi was fine with this, he noticed that she sat down next to him. While both focused on their work, Choi couldn't concentrate and wanted to leave. As he began packing his things, Seola offered him a can of coffee and suggested they talk for a while. Choi didn't understand what Seola wanted and wondered if she was going to accuse him of being a stalker. However, Seola seemed unsure about what to say. She finally remarked that she had noticed he looked happy lately, which intrigued him even more. Seola commented that she had observed his happiness when he was with a certain girl, and Choi immediately thought she was referring to Yuming. However, Seola was only concerned about potential rumors. Choi reminded her that he had promised to keep her secret. At that moment, Choi received a message and quickly responded to it. While he typed, Seola looked nervous, and Choi noticed the expression in her eyes. He assured her that the message had nothing to do with her, though Seola found it hard to believe because of Choi's behavior. In response, Choi candidly stated that he had no reason to act suspiciously, since there was no evidence against him. He explained that if Seola left the bar, she wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore, as she planned to do the following month. However, Choi was curious as to why Seola continued to share things with him. Seola replied that she didn't trust him. Her words annoyed Choi, and he remarked that if he wasn't trustworthy, he could easily expose everything she did. Before leaving, Seola wanted to reaffirm their promise, although Choi didn't understand what she meant. Looking at her again, Seola clarified that she was talking about cleaning the chalice, which embarrassed Choi as it seemed like she was teasing him. Additionally, Seola noticed that Fifi was also present with them, prompting Choi to apologize to her for his reaction. However, Seola reassured him that it wasn't an issue. Although Choi asked what she said, Seola simply replied that it was nothing but mentioned that if they continued what had happened last time, she wanted Choi to keep it a secret. Choi understood what she meant and felt embarrassed, so Seola decided to start working. Choi quickly showed her the chalice, surprising her with how sudden it was. Although Choi didn't understand her reaction, Seola simply said it was very unexpected. Choi thought Yuming's thoughts were rubbing off on him but refused to give in to such nonsense. He told Seola that if she didn't like it, she didn't have to do anything, which embarrassed her, and she only mentioned that she was surprised. This made Choi happy, and he tried to help her feel more comfortable. However, Seola continued to appear embarrassed. Despite this, Choi couldn't help but notice the cute expression on her face, which Seola noticed when she saw him looking at her. Seeing Choi's blank response, Seola realized he wasn't great at communicating. Even though Choi didn't understand why she was nervous, she didn't dislike being in that situation. Because of this, Choi joked with her again and suggested they get started. For Seola, cleaning the chalice was very important and real, making her heart race every time she thought about it, especially with Choi watching her. Before they could do anything, the door began to open, startling Choi. The person entering was Kim, looking for Choi. He felt nervous about her presence, but Kim mentioned that someone had told her he was in that room. Choi couldn't believe she had come looking for him. But most of all, he was in a terrible situation because he barely managed to hide Seola, and her belongings were far away. Choi didn't understand why Kim was there or what her intentions were, so he directly asked her why she was looking for him. When Seola heard the name Kim, she remembered that she was the girl they had worked on the project with and noticed the chalice beginning to glow, though she didn't understand why. Choi made a strange noise but avoided explaining why, as Kim was present. Still, Kim only wanted to talk to Choi for a moment, and he wanted to know what was going on. Kim seemed to have trouble expressing what she wanted to say at first, leaving Choi even more intrigued. The girl eventually said she wanted to be as popular as him, which made him doubt his own popularity. Seola also showed disbelief at the idea of him being popular since she thought he wasn't attractive. Kim explained that she was shy and introverted, making it difficult for her to make many friends. She knew there were some girls in the engineering department and thought they could get along, but she felt that was just her idea, as pretty girls like Seola generally didn't form groups with other girls and preferred being around guys. Additionally, Kim noted that Choi spent a lot of time with a beautiful and arrogant girl like Seola, which was a topic of conversation among the men. She also mentioned that Choi seemed to be getting along well with the professor's assistant lately. That's why Kim wanted to get along with people the way Choi did with Seola. Choi could only think that Kim was completely misunderstanding the situation, while Seola thought Choi was just a returning student and that Kim had vision problems. However, since the situation wasn't normal, Seola came up with an idea. As Choi asked if that's what Kim wanted to talk about, he made another strange noise but quickly said it was nothing bad. Seola was cleaning the chalice and whispered to Choi to give Kim good advice, since she couldn't do it herself. Kim thought Choi was feeling bad, but he didn't feel confident about being the right person to advise her. However, Kim was sure he was a great person for that. To Choi, there was nothing wrong with Kim, and he told her that Seola wore a lot of makeup because girls like her enjoyed it. But he also knew Kim was hiding her beauty because she was already pretty enough. Seola got a bit annoyed and bit the chalice, surprising Choi. However, he told Kim it was nothing. Choi then began moving his chair, thinking it was broken and couldn't adjust it properly. Kim asked how she would look with makeup, but Choi told her again that he wasn't suggesting anything, since she was beautiful and charming just the way she was. Kim understood this, but they heard someone cough, and Choi mentioned that he was getting sick and that was why he coughed, although he actually felt another pain. Kim was worried and almost approached him, but Choi stopped her instantly, explaining that he didn't want her to get sick. Kim apologized, thanking him for taking care of her during the group work, though for Choi it wasn't anything special. Meanwhile, Seola had finished her task and was drinking some holy water that Choi had stored. At that moment, Kim said goodbye to Choi, thanking him for everything, and as soon as she left, Seola came out of hiding, saying she almost died. Choi didn't understand what she meant, which seemed ridiculous to him because it would be a strange thing to say. However, to Seola, it wasn't funny at all. At that moment, Kim returned because she had forgotten something and realized that Seola was there with Choi. She didn't know what they were doing, and Seola was nervous about whether Kim had overheard everything. Kim wanted to know what they were doing together, putting Choi in a tough spot. Fortunately, it didn't take long before Kim left again. Seola commented that she was doing her homework, which made Choi think she was quick to come up with that excuse. Kim knew Seola hadn't been there when she came in, but Seola explained that she had been hiding. Seola continued, saying that if they were seen alone at night, it could be misinterpreted, and she didn't want malicious rumors to spread, which would embarrass her. Choi thought it was a good excuse, but also felt uncomfortable, as it made him seem like a complete mess. However, Kim raised her voice, asking why Seola didn't speak formally to Choi, considering he was superior to her, and if she wasn't ashamed of being so rude. Choi was impressed that someone was defending him. Seola couldn't come up with a good response, and decided to run away because she was busy. Neither of them could stop her, leaving both Choi and Kim puzzled as they didn't know what had just happened. Choi silently thanked Seola for helping him survive the situation. Kim was surprised, though Choi didn't understand why until he realized his pants had fallen. He apologized to Kim for that, not even knowing when it had happened. The next day, Seola was greeted by her usual admirers, who appreciated her beauty. She couldn't help but wonder if Kim liked Choi and why she would. Considering him a pervert, this idea annoyed her a little. Meanwhile, Seola noticed Choi was standing in front of her, visibly downcast, because the day before, he had explained to Kim that the elastic in his pants had broken, and he hadn't noticed. Kim understood without asking further questions. However, at that moment, Choi felt depressed, believing Kim now thought of him as a pervert and that he wouldn't be able to look her in the eyes. Seola approached him to greet him and ask if anything had happened after she left. Fortunately, nothing else had happened. Choi took the opportunity to return something she had forgotten, a blouse she had left behind the previous day. This greatly embarrassed Seola, who began hitting him in public, accusing him of being part of a mafia or something similar. Their classmates who saw this felt sad because they had done their homework, but Seola was getting closer to their leader instead of them. This was unusual since they had done a great job and helped a lot. At that moment, they saw Yuman, whom they admired for her beauty. Lately, one of the boys was about to talk to Yuman, as she was his ideal girl. But just then, Yuman greeted Choi, scolding him for not sending her a message. This left the boy wondering what people saw in Choi. Seola also greeted Yuman and said goodbye to both of them, as her class was about to start. She ran off, and Yuman noticed how, despite being conceited, Seola behaved kindly with Choi. Choi started thinking that maybe Seola was beginning to like him, even though she had only cleaned the chalice twice. A few days later, Choi was completely alone when he overheard some boys talking about a group called The Ring at school, where high-quality photos were uploaded for all members. It seemed most of these photos were taken in the engineering building. Intrigued, Choi decided to check if this was true, and indeed found the photos. He couldn't believe who would be bold enough to do such a thing at the university until someone suddenly entered the classroom where Choi was. He suspected the only person crazy enough to do it could be Yuman. The next day, while Yuman was walking down the hallway, she heard a voice calling her. Turning around, she saw Choi and wondered what he was doing there. Choi told her that he wanted to talk with her for a while, which embarrassed Yuman a little, but she asked him to wait for her in the smoking area since she wouldn't take long. Choi, for his part, felt excited without knowing exactly why. While he was smoking, a couple of guys greeted Choi, and he returned the greeting, realizing it was the first time they had greeted him. At that moment, Yuman arrived, and Choi thought she had already finished everything she had pending. However, Yuman pointed out that those words weren't appropriate for her as a graduate student. She wanted to know what they wanted to talk about, so Choi showed her his phone, presenting the images. Unfortunately, Yuman informed him that the photos had already been deleted, but she understood what he meant. Still, when they talked about whether it was her who had been uploading the photos, both were left thoughtful. Yuman believed Choi was suggesting she expose herself that way due to his preferences, something Choi denied outright. He was concerned about how dangerous it was to upload such content to the internet. Yuman smiled at this and asked if it would also be dangerous for her to take off her vest since she was wearing her cosplay. This insinuation made Choi blush, as he noticed that Yuman didn't deny anything about the photos. Although Choi didn't want to judge Yuman's preferences, he was aware of the risks, and this worried her. Choi seemed genuinely concerned, which surprised Yuman. He explained that some guys had been talking about the subject that day, and that things like the cosplay she wore could put her in danger if someone found out, something he wouldn't want for her. Yuman asked how he knew that could happen, and Choi mentioned that some individuals act recklessly, leading Yuman to call Choi a pervert, though she was also happy to be with him and made it known. Choi didn't understand if Yuman wanted to pray again in public, but noticing there were quite a few students in the area, Yuman murmured that it was dangerous and asked Choi to follow her. Both went to the laboratory, though Choi thought Yuman was crazy because a professor might be nearby. However, Yuman pointed out that no one used those laboratories. Choi agreed to help her keep her secret, but also noticed there was a mattress in the place. Yuman responded enigmatically that he would understand when he became a graduate student, as she had to spend almost all day at the university with a sort of slave to help relieve her stress. Choi wanted to pray with her but looked quite nervous, something Yuman immediately noticed. She understood that his nervousness was because it was daytime, and it might be dangerous to pray under those conditions. However, she knew the professor was traveling, and no student was authorized to enter without permission, so they would be safe. For Yuman, praying as much as possible was fine. While they prayed to God, Yuman didn't understand why her soul felt purer when she was with Choi and in a safe place. She felt more excitement than when in public since, a few years ago, when she went to pray with her boyfriend, she apologized to him. Her boyfriend thought she was afraid since he knew she was nervous and waited for her to feel secure with him to pray. Yuman knew he wasn't a bad person, but rather had a flaw. She felt more drawn to danger. She wondered if maybe she didn't like her boyfriend as much as she thought, and if her attraction to him wasn't genuine since she preferred exciting things like parks. However, with Choi, it was completely different because she knew her soul had been completely purified. That same afternoon, after finishing praying, Choi wanted to know if Yuman was really the one uploading the photos, but she vehemently denied being responsible. This left Choi even more confused, as he wanted to know why she had lied to him if it wasn't her. However, Yuman never confirmed nor denied being responsible, which made Choi assume it wasn't her. Both began speculating about who the mysterious girl might be, but they couldn't come up with a concrete name. Yuman was curious to know who the beautiful girl taking those photos was, and asked Choi to inform her if he discovered anything else about her. Both agreed that exposing oneself that way was risky, especially if a guy caught her, as Choi explained. Additionally, Choi was also intrigued to know who the beautiful girl taking those photos was, something Yuman understood perfectly. However, despite her curiosity, Yuman looked genuinely happy when they left. She said goodbye, mainly because she had a lot of work as a graduate student. Choi understood the situation and walked away, feeling the cold of the night, but Yuman couldn't stop looking at him, blushing. Days later, Choi was worried about the upcoming exams, and not having anyone to study with, planned to do it alone. However, he was surprised when someone greeted him, which made him quite nervous. When he turned to see who it was, he realized it was a boy from his class. Though Choi couldn't quite remember his name, the boy turned out to be part of the group they had worked with on a project before, which confused Choi even more. He thought the boy's name might be Minsu. The latter asked him not to forget him since they were in the same class. Choi thought it wasn't bad for the boy to approach first and greet him, so he invited him for coffee, though Minsu only drank a rather expensive one. In class, Seola was, as always, being admired by her admirers, but she seemed to be looking for someone. When she noticed Choi was present, she fixed her hair a little and prepared to greet him. However, Minsu approached Choi and sat next to him, even inviting him to eat afterward. Choi wasn't sure about accepting, and seeing the situation, Seola decided to leave without saying anything. That afternoon, Choi was quite upset with Minsu because the meal he invited him to turned out to be very expensive. He thought this was because seniors always invited their juniors to eat. Despite this, Choi offered to study together for the exams, but Minsu declined, arguing that he had only approached Choi because he thought he was always surrounded by girls. However, curiously, Choi had been alone all day, which puzzled him. Minsu said goodbye, hinting he would return next time something interesting happened, which Choi found a bit odd. Arriving at the library, Choi decided to forget everything and start studying as soon as possible. While looking for a seat, he apologized to the person next to him for accidentally hitting them with his bag. To his surprise, he realized it was Seola, who looked beautiful with her hair tied up. On the other hand, Seola wondered why Choi was there, or if he was looking for her. Choi wanted to know why Seola was looking at him, to which she turned and asked about his friend who had been with him all day. In her thoughts, Seola misunderstood the situation, thinking Choi was looking for her, but she didn't understand why that made her so happy. The situation left Choi confused, since he knew Minsu wasn't really his friend. He explained to Seola that Minsu was one of the juniors, and joked by asking if she was jealous that he had spent so much time with him during the day. This caused Seola to playfully hit him, saying that was impossible. Seola then asked Choi to speak to her informally, arguing that they had already worked together on the chalice. However, Choi clarified that he had never fully prayed with her, leading to another hit from Seola. At that moment, Choi thought about Minsu and what he was missing by leaving him alone. After studying a bit more, Seola got up from her seat to go to the restroom, leaving Choi alone and quite bored. However, while alone, he realized the mysterious girl had uploaded a recent photo. Looking at it more closely, Choi noticed the photo was taken in the men's restroom. This made him think of Seola, who had just mentioned going to the restroom. Although it was hard for Choi to believe, he began to wonder if it was possible the photos were being taken at that very moment. Choi rushed to the restroom, convinced that the beauty account belonged to Seola since he knew she could be bold at times, but didn't expect something like that. Upon arriving at the restroom and opening it quickly, he realized no one was there. Thinking he might have misinterpreted the situation, he noticed the restroom's structure was different from the one in the photo. This led him to sit down and carefully review the comments on the post. He decided to leave a comment to make it clear he knew who it was and that it concerned him. After posting his comment, Choi reviewed the comments again and noticed many of the beauty account's followers were encouraging her to keep posting, arguing that Choi's claims were false. This irritated Choi as he was only trying to warn her and calm things down. He wrote a couple more comments, but the girl's account continued not to believe him, just like many of her followers. Faced with this situation, Choi wondered what would happen if they managed to find the person behind the account. He knew his comment wouldn't be enough to convince the beauty account to stop, as she would probably stay silent out of fear. However, the account posted another photo, challenging him to find her, which made Choi recognize the location as the computer lab on the 5th floor of the nearby building. Determined to catch her, Choi prepared to run and make her taste defeat, momentarily forgetting his main objective. Meanwhile, Seola was carrying 2 coffees, one for herself and one for Choi, practicing how she would give it to him when she saw him to reconcile and then go out for a drink together to make peace. However, noticing that Choi wasn't there, Seola imagined he had gone to the restroom again. She fixed her hair and waited patiently for him to return, noting that he was taking quite a long time. Choi, quite tired, finally arrived and wondered if the mysterious girl was still in the classroom. At that moment, the door suddenly opened and the girl came out. Choi tried to get her attention, asking her to wait a moment, but when she saw him, she ran away, dropping her glasses. Choi was about to chase after her but felt pain in his foot from running. When he looked up, he no longer saw the girl in the hallway. However, he noticed she had left something important: the unique glasses she was wearing. He recognized the design as similar to a girl from the engineering department he knew, although he didn't think it was her due to her shyness. He decided to go back for his backpack, which he had left in the library along with a coffee and a note from Seola, who had left first and called him silly. The next day, Choi couldn't stop thinking about the glasses and realized that judging someone solely by their glasses wasn't the right thing to do. He also compared the girl in the photos to Kim, but since Kim always wore thick sweatshirts, he wasn't sure it was her. This bothered him quite a bit, especially because he already had problems with the upcoming exams and was still thinking about these things. He decided to focus on his studies, but noticed several guys gathered in a group. He recognized the guys from his class and the girl who was with them. She approached him and greeted him. When he looked up, Choi realized it was Kim and noticed she had stopped wearing glasses. Additionally, he realized she was quite pretty at first glance. This led him to suspect she might be the mysterious girl, as he could now see her better, and noticed she was a beautiful girl. With this, the first part of Are There Goddesses in Engineering concludes. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. The plot is very interesting, and I'd love to continue with all of this. It's incredible to find such intriguing elements in this kind of story. If you liked it as much as I did, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share it with your friends. For the second part, I'll set a goal of 100 likes to bring it to you.